Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our session in GMMUN School, Global Millennials Model United Nations School, Batch 9, which this will be our final class. The fourth class will be our final class. So this is going to be the last time we will see each other in a GMMUN School environment. Perhaps we'll meet again in any other opportunity, but for today, this will be our final class in which we will talk about draft resolution. Now, if you're talking about draft resolution, then we're talking about the final document in Model United Nations. As we have learned earlier in previous weeks, we have understood about position paper. We have understood about ways to make a speech in MUN. We also have understood about the materials that might be beneficial in understanding the flow or the debate of MUN, how the sessions go, how the sessions go in transition from one to another. And now we're talking about the final part of MUN, which also happens to be the final session of MUN itself. If we take a look at the flow of the debate in MUN in the first class, if you guys still remember, the first one is roll call. The next one is general speakers list, right? Still remember, right? And then we have moderated caucus and then unmoderated caucus. And after that, we have a draft resolution or a resolution voting session. But before a voting session is done, which we have learned last week about the voting mechanism, we are now trying to understand and learn about the technicalities of how to draft a draft resolution MUN. I will show you the details of the materials, and after that, I will show you the example of a draft resolution, which I will also share on the WhatsApp group. And after that, we will see whether you guys have understood or whether you guys have a concern regarding a certain things in draft resolution. Then I will make sure that that is covered as well. And one more note from me, if you think that I'm speaking too fast, or even if I'm speaking too slowly, or perhaps my signal is not clear, or the messages that I'm trying to say are not to the point, or not, straight to the point, please let me know so that I can adapt my tone and perhaps make you understand better. All right. Now I will start with my presentation about draft resolution. This is the presentation made by the Global Millennial Group, which I will share as well in the WhatsApp group. Now, since this is our final class, I hope you guys will maximize this opportunity as a time where you will absorb as many knowledge as possible. And perhaps I also expect some of you to ask questions, since this will be our final session and it will not be as flexible as of now when it comes to asking questions, because perhaps after this session I will not be as fast response as I used to be during the whole session, since I have to take care of other classes in the next batch. Okay, so make sure if you want to have questions, you can ask it now. You can ask it to me, or even you can type it on the Zoom chat box, and then I will make sure that the question is answered. All right. Now, documents in Model United Nations. So position paper is the first part, right? And you guys have understood that this is the document that you have to make and submit before the conference starts. So before the first day of the conference, the position paper is already finished and is already submitted to the secretariat. The chairs will review your position paper and they will grade whether your position paper is ranked as the best position paper. Now, when it comes to position paper, we have understood that this is a paper that is prepared by one country, right? Prepared by one delegate. But in draft resolution and in working paper as well, which will be drafted during this session of the conference itself, it will not only be drafted by one country. It will be drafted by more than one country. It can be two, it can be three countries, it can be even 10 countries, or even more than that. Now, why does it happen like that? Why don't we make our own draft resolution? Remember that in the voting session last week, we have understood that when it comes to passing a resolution, we have to meet a minimum requirement of a 2/3 of the whole delegates who are currently participating in that conference, right? Or as we call it, we have the 2/3 majority and we have the majority vote itself, right? So we have the majority and we have the 2/3 majority. 2/3 is used when it comes to pass a resolution, but a simple majority will be used when it comes to passing a motion or passing certain motions in moderated caucuses. Now, we have understood that it has to meet a minimum requirement, right? So if there are 30 delegates, we're going to use the same example as last week. There are 30 delegates. The simple majority will be 16, but the 2/3 majority will be 2/3 out of 30 itself, which is 20. So there should be a minimum of 20 delegates to pass a resolution of saying yes in making sure that that resolution is accepted as the final and the accepted one. Which means that if you don't have a minimum friends of countries amounting to 20, so it will be hard for you to pass that resolution, right? Let's say if your group is only 13, 14, or 15 countries, and the other group is 30 minus 15, which is 15 as well, then there won't be a draft resolution that is going to be accepted, since both draft resolution only meets 15 votes of yes, and not the minimum 20 of which is the 2/3 of 30. If it does not meet the 2/3 minimum requirement, then the resolution will not pass. For working paper, we don't have a voting session. We don't have a voting session for working paper. We don't even have a presentation session for working paper, since this is a paper and a working process. The sole function of working paper is to portray the ideas, to share the ideas, to let other delegates know what this block is doing, what this block is thinking, what kind of solutions that they're preparing in the preliminary stage. Perhaps the solution may change. All of this is the function of working paper. It is to show that this is what we're currently doing. It might change in the future, but as of now, this is what we're doing, right? So that's the big differences between position paper, working paper, and draft resolution. If you can understand the differences between all of these three documents, it will be easier for you to analyze when to strategize your strategy, right? Perhaps you want to approach delegates during the early process of drafting the working paper, or maybe when it comes to already draft resolution, you already have delegates in mind. You have, certain countries for you to approach and certain countries for you to avoid. You have that in mind once you make your draft resolution, right? Because in a draft resolution, apart from making sure that you meet the minimum requirement, you also have the responsibility to seek for countries or seek for delegates who share the same interests with you. So if you are all in for vaccination of COVID, for example, you're going to have to team up with delegates who share the same thought, right? You cannot team up with delegates who oppose vaccination of COVID-19. That's how draft resolution is drafted. You shouldn't be in the same block with people who do not share, or with countries who do not share the same thought with you. You may be in the same team, right? But make sure that it does not violate your interests, right? It does not violate your way of strategizing your solution. Maybe you have the same vision, you have the same final target, but only in the difference is only in the mechanism. But make sure that when the delegate is in your block, when the country is in your block, make sure that the whole process of the thinking process, the whole process of the drafting process is in line with everybody's mind. So no violation of or no disagreement will be made. Okay, because if there is a disagreement, if there is a violation of what you think is right, then the voting process might, give you kind of different result. You already gather, for example, 22 delegates, but once the voting resolution starts, you only had, for example, 9 or even 10 voting yes for your draft resolution, because the delegates who were previously in your block thought that you were not, as accommodative as they thought you would be, and therefore they wouldn't be voting for your draft resolution, and instead they will vote for the other's draft resolution, which is kind of sad, because during the whole process of the drafting, they were with us and not with them, right? So since this is politics, yes, this is politics, it's up to your style of approaching people, right? Maybe your draft resolution is the best, right? Maybe your draft resolution is the best when it comes to the quality, when it comes to, the substantive matter of the draft resolution, yes. But when it comes to approaching other countries or other delegates, your block may not be the number one when it comes to things like that. So if I have to move on to the next slide, and sorry for the long presentation of that slide, working paper, which is what I would call the stage before the draft resolution, even though it's not necessary. You really don't have to make a working paper if the chairs don't tell you, because sometimes they immediately ask for delegates to just, just draft a draft resolution already. Skip the working paper. Some might do that, but generally speaking, working paper is kind of required for you to make. But the team that you were with during the drafting process of the working paper may not always be the same, right? You might be teaming up with 4 countries of A, B, C, and D, but during the draft resolution, you may be teaming up with E, F, G, and H. So it can be different. It can be different. And that's okay, actually. That's okay, because working paper is actually a stage for you to adapt, right? If you take a look at number 1 here, it says that the paper consists of your solutions in a brief way. So you do not, make a quite a detailed explanation. It's not the same with draft resolution, because what you need to do in working paper is only to show what currently is going on, what kind of topics that you have discussed, and you only talk about the surface, right? If you take a look at the surface of the sea, you only talk about the surface of the sea. You don't talk about the, animals or the plants living under the sea, in the seabed. You only talk about the surface of the sea. That's the purpose of the working paper. Number 2, there's no exact format and structure. You literally can build any kind of, format for your working paper. It can be in a form of paper, it can be in a form of essay, it can be in a form of presentation, it can be in a form of, let's say, infographics or even poster. When I was participating in Singapore Model UN, right, in 2018. It was held in National University of Singapore. I remember that I was drafting working paper in a form of presentation. It was maybe around 2 or 3 slides, and it worked. The working paper passed. It was presented even. So we presented using a PowerPoint format. But some blogs also did their working paper using a standard traditional Word document. What I'm trying to say is that working paper does not have a fixed format. So even if you choose, for example, a Word paper document, it does not always have to be in a form of paragraphs. It does not always have to be in a form of, simple bullet points. It can be a combination of both. It can be, either one. It's up to you to, make sure that everyone understands what you're saying. Because remember, working paper will not be presented. Take a look at number 2. You don't need to present it. What you need to do is to just discuss it later on formal debate and moderated caucus. So you don't need to present it as if it were a draft resolution. A draft resolution needs to be presented at a later time. But working paper, you don't have to present it. Sometimes you only discuss it, and that's even up to the forum, right? Do they want to talk about your working paper? Because working paper may be more than 5, it may be more than 3 working papers in the same council. So not all working papers will be entertained, right? Only chosen ones, only those who meet the minimum requirement of simple majority, which is 50% plus 1. So you have to ask for yeses. Yes, you have to, approach people so that they want to vote yes for your working paper to be discussed, and that includes your enemies. That includes countries who might not be sharing the same interest with you. So there's this specialty in MUN where even when you're hated by 2 or 3 countries, right? Either way, you're gonna have to approach them, right? Invite them to your blog or persuade them to change their mind. Anything you can do to make sure that you meet the requirement of the simple majority or the 2/3 majority. But still, some countries, they know their boundaries. They know that their limit is this, their limit is that. So regardless of how hard you persuade them, some of them might not be, getting into that trap, So what you will need to do is to just keep the number maybe consistently, so that until the end of the voting resolution part, you don't have to, worry about the decreasing number of people voting for you. So yes, that would be working paper. Any question before I move on? Because I believe I've talked too much on this slide. All right, so Any questions so far? About working paper, or about maybe you want to share your thoughts about working paper? It's up to you. Or maybe you have questions about last week's materials. That's also okay. Anyone? No? If not, I will move on to the next slide. Sorry, I was replying a message. All right, this one, do's and don'ts in working paper. So the first one is, even though you can submit it by yourself, it's better for you to submit it in a form of team. So working paper does not have a minimum requirement of delegates who can be a sponsor or can be a signatory. It does not have some sort of that requirement, but it does not mean that you just can submit it by yourself. So it's not a good sign. Why? Because you're gonna have to find friends eventually, right? If you submit it by yourself, then how would countries approach to you, right? If you only do it everything by yourself, you're making it by yourself, presenting it by yourself, drafting it by yourself, other countries will be reluctant to join, right? They don't feel needed. They don't feel, demanded by you. So they might be more interested to join other blocks from other teams. So even though you can submit it by yourself, again, it's better for you to have a block and highlight some of the important points of your block solution. Remember that this is a working paper. You don't present everything. You only present the surface. You present the general parts, the main points of the solution. So there's no need for you to be super, super specific. Just think this as if this were a general speakers list in a written form, right? So what you need to do is just to put out all the general information of everything that you have discussed, everything that you have debated on, everything that you have agreed with your teams or with yourself. Just put it in a form of a written form, and it will be discussed later as a working paper. That's the do's. The don'ts is that don't have too much details, right? And don't make it already in a DR form. So perhaps this might be quite confusing since we haven't seen the example of draft resolution. But after this, I will show you and share screen to you the example of a draft resolution. But just understand the basic boundaries of draft resolution itself. Okay. But before we move on to that, we'll stick with working paper. Okay, the next one. Don't. The first don't is don't have too many details because it will not be considered as a working paper if it is too detailed. Second one is don't make it already in a DR format. So the difference with working paper and draft resolution is that draft resolution already has a fixed format. It has a structured, obligatory requirement for you to follow. So you cannot just make any kind of format that you want. But in a working paper, you don't have that fixed format. You don't have a structure that you have to follow. Because as I have explained earlier, you can make it in a form of presentation, in a form of infographics, in form of poster, standard traditional documents also allowed. So it's up to you for you to decide which kind of format that you want to use. But don't make it already in the R format because the chairs might be suspicious of what you have done by making it into a DR format. Maybe they can just, assume that you already made this at your home before the conference starts instead of during the conference, because the sole essence of a draft resolution is teamwork, right? And working paper is also about teamwork. If you're not making it together, if you're not making it in a collaborative way, then what's the point of joining MUN, right? United Nations is made because of countries, of member states coming from different backgrounds, right? It's a United Nations, nations of from many backgrounds united as one. If you don't share that value in the way you draft a working paper, then we will have to question your, seriousness in participating in this kind of conference, right? So never think that everything can be done by yourself. Never think, even in MUN, even in life, never think that everything can be done by yourself. You're gonna need help, and don't be shy to ask for help, right? Don't be shy to ask for help. Don't be ashamed for asking for help. And that also plays a crucial role in drafting a working paper. If you feel that you need help from the chairs, you need help from other delegates, just ask and describe in which part that you think you're struggling the most. That's the way for you to
make your working paper as good as possible.
Okay, moving on to the question. There's a question from Tanting. How do we approach other countries? Do we have to brief them about our plans or solutions that we might write on our working paper? Yes, exactly. Thank you, Kim. So you have to brief them about your plans. Whether your plans are, interesting or not, it will be up to them. Your job is just to show them that your plans or your solutions are the best when it is compared to other blocks, countries, or other blocks, plans or solution. And apart from briefing about your solution, there are other ways for you to, mingle with other delegates. And it's not always, about briefing about the solution. Maybe you can just, talk regularly, talk, you know, as a friend, as human to human. We're not talking about a specific issue in the United Nations system. So you can also do that. So MUN is not just about, approaching one another in a formal way. It's also about making friends, right? It's all about making new friends, getting to know each other. And that's probably the way for you to persuade people to make them be approachable, right? So you can do both ways. Both is fine. Both is more recommended instead of just, choosing either one. All right. So that's working paper. I'm going to show you the example of working paper since it will be confusing if you don't see an example of one. So I will download it here. Okay, and then I will share screen it for you. All right, now this is the example of working paper. If you take a look at the heading part, working paper 1.1, it is said there that the council is the United Nations Human Rights Council, right? Or the UNHRC. The topic is Cameroon human catastrophe. And then the signatories is Republic of India, South Africa, Egypt, Commonwealth of Australia, and the last one is Indonesia. If you take a look at the heading part, it's super simple. We only have to, need to write the information that you think is the most important. But apart from all of that, you only just, move quickly to the solution part since you only have to show the keywords, right? The guided by, pricing matchers, and all that. But remember that this is a structure that is chosen by this team, right? So India and team thinks that this will be our, our form, our structure of drafting our working paper. The question is, sir, can we move, for example, I want to move key solution to the first part. So the last one will be the keywords. Is it possible? Yes. The answer is yes. It's super possible. Sir, can we just, make it in a form of paragraphs, or do we have to make it in a form of points like this one? The answer is yes. You can make it in a form of paragraphs. It's that flexible for you to show your ideas, even when you don't want to even use any kind of words. You just want to use, maybe charts or tables. It's also okay, because working paper is not a paper that will be finalized as a document that will be called as a resolution. It will only help you to be there, right? It will only help you to draft your draft resolution, and it will not be made as a final document eventually, right? So since that is the situation, you can make any kind of, format or tables or any kind of structure that you wish to have in your working paper or in your team's working paper. So one, it's flexible. Secondly, you can, order the parts however you want, right? And the maximum page, there's no maximum page. You are free to make as many pages as possible. But believe me when I say this, some chairs, some delegates, they don't have time to see all the words in multiple pages. Just make it as simple as possible. 2, 3 pages, 5 pages will be fine. Make sure that it is super, super detailed. It's super, super efficient, but not in so detailed way. That's what I'm trying to say. Because in a working paper, you don't have to make it all detailed. You can just put a brief explanation over certain topics. And that's how you present your working paper later on in a debate caucus, right? Not in a presentation session, but presented in a discussion or during a debate session in a moderated caucus, right? So this is the example. I will share it on Instagram later, but I will move on first to our presentation due to time constraint. Now this is where we were. Okay, before I move on, we have finished working paper. That's exactly the sample of the working paper that you might, want to make as a reference. And personally, I have any other types of working papers as well. Those who are made by me, those that are made by me, and even those that are made by my friends. If you want to ask for that, you want to ask for reference, sir, do you have an example where I can, learn from? Then I will be more than happy to share it with you. Just personally chat me, or you want to mention me on the group, is super fine. Make sure you have everything you need before you finish MUN school. Okay. So yeah, that will be working paper. Now about draft resolution. Before I move on, again, any questions so far about working papers or any other materials in MUN? No? No question? Okay, so this will be our final part, right? Draft resolution. Draft resolution, final part of our class, final part of MUN itself. So this is the final document that you are going to have to make before you finish your day in MUN, before you receive the certificate, before you were announced as the winners of MUN. This is the final stage, right? Which is the output of the conference for 2 days. Well, it might be 3 days, it might be 4 days, but generally it's 2 days for some MUN, especially during online sessions like this era. It will not be more than 3 days. Okay. I have been in an MUN for that is more than 4 days, 5 days, and it's super tiring. So it's so good to see that MUN is back to normal. 2 days, 3 days. I think it's super, super more than enough. Okay, so that's just the intermezzo. You and your block need to write the resolution comprehensively. Yes, the answer is true. You're gonna have to make it as comprehensive as possible, cover everything that you have discussed, cover everything that needs to be discussed. If you take a look at the study guide, they have this section called karmas, which stands for a question, questions a resolution must answer, karmas. Sometimes 5 questions, it can even be more than that. What you need to do is make sure that the questions that the chairs think you need to answer are all answered on the draft resolution. Make sure that the questions that the chair need you to answer are all explained comprehensively in the draft resolution. That's how you make a detailed draft resolution. For draft resolution, it is your time to be detailed. In a working paper, just be general, be brief. But in draft resolution, make it as detailed as possible. Make it as, as many bullet points as possible if you wish, or even make it as brief detailed as possible. I don't know if that's even a word or not, but make it detailed, but make it in a brief so that it's long, right? If you make it in that way, if you frame it in that way, chairs and other delegates will be, they will understand it better when they know that they're reading a whole structure of everything. So if you talk about vaccination, make sure you talk about all corners of vaccination from all parts of different perspectives. So don't only cover it in one perspective, cover it in a lot of perspective. If you wish to make vaccination as a solution, don't talk only from the financing of vaccination or the funding programs for vaccination, because perhaps that section alone is not answering the whole big picture of the issue, which is the pandemic. Perhaps if you want to talk about the financing of vaccination, you can also talk about the ways of how vaccination will be distributed. How will we distribute vaccines to areas where everything is remote, where everything needs to be, where everything needs to be accommodated, right? They don't have cars, they don't have ships, they don't have internet, they don't have electronic devices that are, advanced. That's different with big cities. Then how do we spread our vaccines to those areas? And after you talk about the financing, you talk about the ways for distribution, you're gonna have to talk about, for example, responsibility. What if some people don't feel well after they get vaccinated? What kind of responsibility that the country is offering? Because if they don't offer a responsibility, then people will be reluctant to get vaccinated, right? People will be, they will be thinking twice to get vaccinated, since they see their friends, they don't have, some sort of a guarantee that once they're getting vaccinated, they will be safe, right? And apart from the financing, apart from the distribution, apart from the responsibility, there are other ways for you to make sure that your vaccination solution is as strong as possible. For example, you want to talk about the classification of vaccination. Who gets the vaccination first? Do we give it to the elderly people first? Or do we prioritize our children first? Or even do we prioritize our workers first? Which sectors of ages, which sectors of working environments, which sectors of jobs or industries that we want to prioritize? It will be a question that you need to answer. It will be the kind of discussion that you need to have when you draft a resolution, right? The second part, the third part, there's an exact format and structure that you have to follow. So it's different with working paper where everything is super flexible. In draft resolution, everything is super fixed. It's structured. It's obligatory for you to follow. You cannot just make your own version of draft resolution in anyhow you want. But in draft resolution, in most draft resolutions in MUN, they have a fixed and a structured format that you need to follow, and you cannot make anything other than that. All right. So the structure, after this, I'll show you an example as well. The structure of a draft resolution, it has and it provides firstly a heading, which is the first part of any kind of draft resolution. Sometimes it puts a United Nations logo or a council logo. It has a DR number and it has a list of sponsors and signatories. We have talked about, I think we have talked about sponsors and signatories, but when it comes to, making sure that your draft resolution is drafted comprehensively, you're going to have these structures, right? And any question before I move on to the next slide? Any question? Okay, if not, then I will move on to the body. So heading is the first part, right? Body is where everything is there. Everything that you have discussed, everything that you have talked about in a draft resolution, it is going to be drafted in the form of the body, right? Which has the preambulatory clauses and the operative clauses. What are the differences between these parts? What is preambulatory and what is operative? I will explain it later after this slide. Okay, I'm going to explain this first and we'll move on to the example. So sponsors and signatories, the difference is that a sponsor is generally those who authored or dominantly build the DR, mostly the leaders, right? The most active delegates or the most contributive delegates, those who put a lot of attention to the draft resolution. How do we select sponsors? How do we know that you are a sponsor or he is a sponsor or she is a sponsor? It is a natural selection, I would say. It's a natural selection. The chairs will not choose who will be the sponsor. It will be the team's decision to choose who will be the sponsor. And again, as I will say, it is a natural selection. It depends on how good you persuade others to choose for you as a sponsor, or perhaps it's how good other people vote for you to be a sponsor. You're gonna have to earn their trust. You're gonna have to earn their, their, maybe apart from trust, you're gonna have to earn their what I would say, honesty, right? They're not gonna vote for you if they don't trust you and they don't feel honest about you, right? So make sure that you're making friends instead of enemies, right? Make sure that you make a super clear and sincere bond with your countries, right? With your country's bloc, because it will eventually make you a sponsor either way. People will trust you more than this guy, or people will trust you more than this girl. Make sure that you are the sponsor, right? And considering the special position of sponsor, the maximum sponsor will be decided by the chair, only the maximum number. So for example, the 10 delegates inside of a block can only choose 2 sponsors, then they're going to have to choose only 2 sponsors because the maximum number is decided by the chair. But that's only the limitation that the chair is going to put on your draft resolution and your block. They're not going to choose the sponsors. They're not going to choose the signatories. They're not going to move people, right? You cannot be a sponsor here. You're going to have to be a sponsor there. There's no such thing as that. And they will only limit the maximum number of sponsors. I would say the bare minimum of sponsor will be 2 delegates, right? 2 delegates is the minimum number of any kind of block in MUN. Now, the signatories. Signatories is quietly as easy as looking at sponsor, but in a contradictive way, which signatories mostly they don't support the draft resolution in a dominant way. They only become a participant in a discussion. They only sometimes frequently, put some thoughts on it, but they don't act on it. They don't draft. They don't coordinate the team. Sometimes they only give thoughts about a certain issues brought by the wannabe sponsors, right? And it's a natural selection again because people will just trust people who are, who can keep them safe, right? You understand what I'm saying? When you want to trust people, you can only choose a select number of people, right? It's not everyone that you're going to choose as leaders or people that you trust. You're only going to refer to people that you love the most, that you think care the most to you. And that's a natural selection that also happens in everyone. Apart from that, signatory can become a signatory in more than one draft resolution, but a sponsor can only be a sponsor in one draft resolution. Okay, so only one draft resolution that a sponsor can be in. He cannot or she cannot be in more than one draft resolution because it will be contradictive. How would you support draft resolution of this, but you oppose another draft resolution, even though this draft resolution is also sponsored by yourself? So since that cannot happen, we can only be a sponsor in one, right? So yeah, that will be the sponsors and signatories part. I'm gonna move on to the example of a draft resolution. All right, so okay, any question while we're waiting for me? Okay, I see one. Okay, from camping again. How much time we're normally given to draft resolution? For that matter, can we start, when can we start to form blocks? You can start making blocks as early as the start of the working paper. Even sessions before that, you can just start approaching people. So there's no limitation. You can even start approaching people from day one. It's super fine because the chair will not limit how or when you will approach others. The first question, how much time are we normally given to draft resolution? I would say around 1 day full, right? 24 hours since the opening of the draft resolution submission. That will be the normal time for you to make a draft resolution. So always spare time of energy and also your energy for the final part of this session, because this is the most exhausting part, I would say. This is the time where you have to debate, but you have to draft, you have to discuss as well, you have to coordinate as well, especially when you are a sponsor. You're gonna have to coordinate all of this. And again, while still making speeches along the way. So you can imagine just how hard it is for you to be a sponsor. That's why people only trust those who can do their things, right? Make sure when you're a sponsor, you can draft and you can make a speech and coordinate everything in the most or even the super most efficient way possible, because that's how you earn their trust, right? All right, you're welcome, Big. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the draft resolution part. But before that, again, any questions so far? Wait. All right, no question. All right, if not, then oh wait, I think I showed a different one. Wait. All right, I'm gonna start sharing it again. All right, this one. Now, if you take a look at this one, this is where I would say, the document that starts looking as a serious document, right? This is a serious document to me because it has all the headings, it has all all the things that you wish to see from a UN resolution, right? I'm just gonna type UN resolution PDF, an example of one, to show you just how serious the draft resolution is. So I'm just gonna choose randomly this one, 2467. See, it's super same. It's the same like this one, just with with sponsors and everything. In a real resolution, they will not list the sponsor at the front, but they will have the same kind of heading in a draft resolution. They have the name of the council, they have the name of the date, and they have the topic, and they will move on to this part. If you take a look at the draft resolution in MUN, it's almost looks the same, right? It has council, sponsors, signatories, and topic. This is the first heading part, right? Entering this one, this is the body part, but this is the preambulatory. Preambulatory means that these are the clauses that only show the reasons why a resolution must be drafted, or why a resolution must be signed by the countries. If you take a look at all of the sentences, it does not show a solution, right? It does not tell you how things are done. It does not tell you how you solve your problems. It only shows, reasons why certain things must happen, but it does not tell you how to execute one. If you take a look at the second clause, this one, recalling its mandate in the promotion of universal respect for the protection of human rights, the address of situations on violation of human rights, and also the prevention of human rights violation. And then take a look at this one as well, reaffirming all human rights are universal, indivisible, interrelated, interdependent, and mutually reinforcing, and that all human rights must be treated in a fair and equal manner on the same footing with the same emphasis. See, it does not solve problems. It only emphasizes certain principles, certain reasons why things must happen. In this case, the protection of human rights. It only tells you how you should protect your human rights, in what principles how you should protect your human rights. But it does not tell the exact way. How do I, or how does my country protect my country's human rights? Do you have any suggestions on that? The clauses in the preambulatory part does not answer it, right? The clauses do not answer that. And that's why we have to move on to the operative clause, which is this one. Operative clauses are signed with numbers. They use numbers, and they use present tense with S or ES at the end. While in preambulatory clauses, if you take a look, mostly it is in the form of a gerund or verb plus ing. So it starts with recalling, welcoming. Sometimes when it is not in the form of gerund, it is in a form of passive, deeply concerned by, concerned or alarmed by. This is an example of, preambulatory clauses that do not use gerund forms. But in operative clauses, we're going to have to use a simple present tense, but plus S or ES according to context. For example, the first part endorses the implementation of Syria as a collaborative framework to resolve the issues that has systematic mechanism, which could be elaborated as follows. So this is an example of an operative clauses that you can make in your draft resolution. Okay, we're moving on to this one. Emphasizes the scope of humanitarian assistance. You're gonna have to list what kind of scope, right? This is the time where you be as detailed as possible. In a working paper, you may and even are allowed to only have this blocked sentence on blue. Emphasizes until people are. That's it. But in a draft resolution, you're gonna have to be detailed, right? That's why you add the remaining, just this one. That's how you defer working paper with draft resolution. The difference is, the difference lays from the simplicity, the detail, whether it is detailed or not, the complexity as well, and the kind of structures or forms that they're using to differentiate itself. Okay, so this is the example. How do you make one? How do you form the sentences? It's up to you. It's up to you for you to form your sentence, but make sure that there's this part. Approves, simple present tense plus S or ES. Affirms, affirm plus S. Further emphasizes, emphasize plus S. So this is the kind of, format that you have to stick to when it comes to draft resolution. All right, any questions so far? Before I move on to but I would say the materials of draft resolution, because this is the example. Any questions so far before I move on? All right, I think I should move on. Oh, wait. Okay, so this is the preambulatory. I've explained earlier that this is the part where where you start your clauses with reasons, right? With justifications, with arguments. But all of those clauses, they don't automatically answer the issue at hand. So the function of a preambulatory clause is only to open the resolution, right? It's most likely in verb ing, and it only consists the background and the legal basis for your solution of the issue. So it does not cover all the solution, it does not cover all the details, but it does cover on the arguments, the principles, the basis, the justifications, the backgrounds in a form of a general explanation way. That's preambulatory clauses. The difference with working with operative clauses, which is this one, operative clauses, they have what we call as the main essence of DR. The DR can move because of its operative clauses. The DR can be realized in a concrete way because they have an operative clauses. So if you only, for example, saying in a preambulatory clause, affirming that human rights need to be protected, it does not answer the problem, right? Okay, we understand it that human rights need to be protected, but the answer or the question is, how do we protect it? When do we protect it? Should we protect it now? Or what kind of human rights that we need to protect? Are we protecting all kinds of human rights? That's the answers, or even that's the questions that you need to answer in the operative clauses. So that when someone takes a look at your clause, they're not going to question themselves twice because they're confused or not. Because when they see your clause at the first glance, they will automatically understand what you're saying. And that's how operative clauses are drafted in an efficient, in a simple, yet in a comprehensive way. It will be most likely, as I have explained earlier, most likely in a verb one form. And the function of an operative clause is to express the idea, again, express the idea of your resolution. So this is when you have to show the detailed mechanism of how certain solutions are made. You're saying that you have to raise awareness among children about vaccination. Then how are you going to do that? What types of children that you wish to approach to? Or even when are you going to start approaching the children? What kind of schools that you wish to make a partnership with when it comes to educating the children? This is the question that you have to answer in the operative clause, right? So that will be the essence. I think we have 4 more slides. Okay, so this is the sample. I'm going to move back to the previous one. In preambulatory, you don't need to remember this, by the way. So maybe only remember 5, the most important that you think is the most important. But apart from that, you don't need to remember it because you can just take a look at the presentation and choose, one word that you think is suitable the most. But during my time, when we cannot open our laptops and handphones, we're going to have to remember all of this. But well, at least some of the most important ones, because we cannot open our laptops except in unmoderated caucus. But again, that's depends on the chair, right? So yeah, it can be in a form, again, it can be in a form of ing, gerund, for plus ing, or in a form of adjective like this one, fully aware of something, or maybe, or taking note, right? Well, that's not an adjective. Oh, this one, confident. Confident about what? Or are you convinced about something? That's adjectives. It also can be in a form of passive. For example, alarmed by, guided by, right? And etc. etc. So that's preambulatory clauses. But for operative clauses, it kind of shrink, right? Kind of decrease. The number of the phrases decreases. You can only choose this one. Choose only this type of words, this type of action words, because this is the words that are frequently used in UN resolutions. So you're going to have to use this part of operative phrases. Don't switch between the preambulatory with the operative one, because it will have a different meaning, right? Even though some words in preambulatory phrases can be used again in operative phrases, you only have to change the form. But again, there are some that are not used interchangeably. Okay, so that's how you make your operative phrases. All right, this is the final part, draft resolution. The first one is you have to propose a motion, introduction of draft resolution. and this will be presented by the sponsor. Only the sponsor. The signatories cannot present the draft resolution. If you still remember earlier, working paper don't have a presentation session, right? It does not have a presentation session. But for DR, this is a special case. You're gonna have to present it for usually 10 minutes. After that, you're gonna have to discuss. You're gonna have to discuss about the draft resolution that already is discussed earlier during the drafting process, but this time the discussion is different. This is a discussion among the draft resolutions that are already finished. Previously, you only debate about the aspects of the DR, but the DR was not already there. But in this time, you are going to have to discuss in a form of a moderated caucus where each block can criticize one another. So this is the special part, also the wildest part, I will say. This is where the debate is really going on. You literally attacking one another's draft resolution, and that's how the chairs want it, right? They want them to fight, quote unquote, fight substantively to to convince others to vote for them. After that, it will be the voting session, which needs to meet the quorum vote or the 2/3 majority. If there are 30 delegates, the 2/3 will be 20. If there are 60 delegates, the 2/3 will be 40. So it depends on the total delegates that are currently in the room of both present and voting, right? After voting is met, if one team reaches the minimum 2/3 majority or the quorum vote, then the resolution will be declared as final and passed. And every nation, even if you don't agree about it earlier, even if you vote for no, you're gonna have to stick to that resolution as the one that is accepted as a final one. Maybe it's not legally binding, but still, this is the final one where you have to refer to, and you cannot refer to previous parts of the resolutions that are already debunked by this resolution. All right. So that will be all from me. Awards and recognition. Best delegate is for the first place. Most outstanding for second place. Honorable mention for third one. Verbal accommodation naturally is fourth place. And best position paper, this is a special one where you will only be graded based on your position paper. So it does not always reflect the performance of you during the MUN. It may reflect that some organizers, they want to give the best position paper for those whose position paper is the best, and for those who actually perform during the whole MUN conferences. That's the difference, right? You're gonna have to ask for the organizer what kind of criteria that they're looking for. Or if it is not the organizer, you can ask directly to the chair. And don't feel shy about it. Don't feel like you're rushing into it. People are curious, right? People need to know about certain things. They've already paid. I've already paid to this conference. Why can I not ask questions, right? That's the kind of mindset that you need to have whenever you want to ask a question, right? So, all right, I think this is the final part. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. If you want to start something, you don't wait until you're the best one, right? You don't wait until you're the greatest one. You're just gonna have to start. You don't have to be great, but right, remember this, but you have to start to be great if you wish to be great. Right? This is the quote that I love the most from GMMU, and maybe this can be your principle in participating in future MUN conferences or even a principle in your life. And that will be all from me. Any question before we close the session, our final class? So sad that it's gonna be the last time I'll saw all of you in a Zoom session talking about MUN. All right, any question? So far, any question? All right. So, all right, perhaps, all right, I'm just gonna finalize this part. Oh, okay, there's this one from, all right, let me select from Zelda and from Darrell. Okay, so after this session ends, do we have to have MUN mock simulation, or do we have to find MUN simulation immediately? Well, we don't provide MUN mock simulation, so you can just register to the real MUN simulation immediately because we already simulated last week. So I would recommend you to just jump in directly to the real MUN instead of simulation, because I think that will help you in learning more about MUN in a concrete way. That's for Zilda. For Darrell, on the position paper, is there a format for even nations to follow? Yes, the answer is yes, but only the structure, right? We have four structures: the background, the pass action, the country stance, and the final part is the solution. You can have that four, but the format, it can be, well, it actually depends on the MUN organizer. If they have, a specific format that you have to follow, then you're gonna have to follow that format. But if they don't specify the kind of format, then you can be, writing in any kind of form, but make sure that all the structures are there, right? Topic background, pass action, again, country stance, and the final one is solution, right? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Daryl, for the question as well. Yeah, sometimes they're not specific, sometimes they are too specific. So just take a look at the regulations from the organizers. All right, so I think that will be all for our, I would say, 1 month, right? It's almost 1 month. Thank you so much for having me as your mentor. Sorry if I speak too fast or if I speak too slowly. I am really happy to be the mentor for all of you. Keep in touch, and perhaps you want to follow each other's Instagram. Feel free to share your Instagram account on the group. Just, make make a fun time out of this, right? And sorry for everything that I've said if anything is wrong. And what again? If you want to ask questions, again, feel free to personally chat me. I will answer to the best of my ability. Ask anything about MUN, or even you want to ask other questions, you can save my contact, because perhaps, sometimes if we keep in touch, we never know what we will be in the future, right? Perhaps one of you will become the president of Indonesia, or even one of you will become a minister of something. So yeah, keep in touch, and we will see each other in other opportunities. The recorded Zoom will be uploaded later. I will let you know once it is uploaded entirely. That will be all from me. Thank you so much, everyone, and I see you in other opportunities. Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.